Good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome again to the EB Show. As you know, the EB Show is hosted each week, every Thursday between 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. right here on i95.5. I am your host, Ramkumar Narinesingh.
And I'm Umar, Abdullah.
And we are here again hosting this media platform, which is here to provide you with information related to matters of your social interests. In tonight's program, we have with us a world-renowned guest. It's Professor Dr. Peter Baofu. You want to say good night, Doctor?
Yeah, good evening.
The Professor Doctor, he's world-renowned. He has a number of accolades to his name. Umar, you want to share with us tonight?
Yes, this guest that we have here tonight, he's a world-renowned American author and visionary. He has written over 160 books. He speaks about 10 languages. He had visited over 110 countries. He has a U.S. Fulbright. He is a U.S. Fulbright scholar in China. He has taught as a professor in a number of universities in Western Europe, the Caucasus, the Middle East, South Asia, North America, and South Asia. So, this is just scratching the surface as regards to the profile of this individual. And we thought it best to bring him in here tonight to discuss some matters that is affecting us here nationally. Professor Peter Baofu. Now, not a lot of people you find you hear with that handle to their name, Doctor Professor. You spoke about the different ideologies. Would it be prudent to, find those common grounds, right, and all the different ideologies, and try to focus attention on what is really the crux of the issue, providing meals, education, job security, all these things?
Many of these questions that you are asking also depend on the specific conditions of a given culture and given society. And when you talk about the common ground, for example, that also is an ideology too. So there are people who disagree that whether you can reach a common ground, but some other people would like to say that no, there is a win-sum game. Others will say that there's a win-win game. So that is also dependent on your own ideology too. You cannot get away from it because all of this are value judgment. But what I'm trying to suggest is that understand what you are proposing in your own country. Over here, as you said, you have the labor unions, you have the civil society, and then you have the government, and you have the business, and different groups, different parties have their own interest to pursue. Mm-hmm. And you ask a good question, how can you search for a common ground? Otherwise, you will say whatever you like, they will say whatever they like. At the end of the day, nothing is going to be done. You will fight against each other. By the way, in some societies, they do enjoy fighting with each other. So this kind of fighting will be end as you go nowadays. In fact, I don't even need to bring about the outside interventions. Nowadays, you have some major powers. They also intervene into the affairs of other countries. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it makes things even worse. Your neighbor is a good example, Venezuela.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to talk about all this kind of problem, and that as soon as you allow these people to continue and do that, and then you see what happened to the society and country, and things have been getting worse and worse and worse. Do you want to be like Venezuela? Of course not, many of you. But how can you reach the common ground? And that, I think, it dependent on many of the social structures that you have over here. And that's a very crucial factor. To be a bit more specific, but I'm not siding with either side. I think that those people of African descent and those people of Indian descent, I think that it's also time for them to work together to search for a common ground. And I noticed that based on my observations, some of these political parties are not really working together. The rhetoric is there, but the reality is something else. It's a question of power, it's a question of wealth. But anyway, this is another proposal.
You spoke about perhaps the difficulty that may arise in finding that common ground because of the difference of ideology and values and what have you. But there's one thing in a country that supersedes all of that, and that's the Constitution. and the laws, the legislated laws of the country, do you think that the constitution or legislation could play some part or some role in this? Because Mr. Narinesingh could very well tell you, we have special laws for industrial relations. We have a separate court for that, as a matter of fact, in this country.
I think that's a good question, but I'm sorry to tell you that the Constitution is part of the problem. In fact, in many countries, the Constitution, the rule of law, is part of the problem. And a lot of people become corrupt in the name of the rule of law. And even for those people who enforce the rule of law are also themselves
Think we have a
corrupt.
court? So get some of those guys on this program,
Yeah,
trade
of
union
course.
leaders, the politicians, and let's really have an open door conversation, an open policy conversation on this program, and you know, let's take this idea forward and let's see how best we can effect or influence that change that we want.
All right, listeners, we want to thank you all for tuning in here tonight with us. As you know, this conversation continues next week, Thursday.